What's up, ladies and gentlemen, Akalon here, and welcome back to each one of it. Of course, if you are new to the channel, thank you so much for joining us. I am very happy to have you here. Today we, of course, take a look at the Banished One, Zovaal, that's correct. You see, the problem is that a lot of people right now feel very disconnected to this character. This is the first time in World of Warcraft history where we have a villain that we almost know nothing about. Blizzard did no setup for this character. They really didn't introduce this character to us literally up until this expansion, and a lot of players are sort of feeling like, but why should I care? Who is this guy? You know, at least with N'Zoth, I knew who he was. With Arthas, I knew who that was. Deathwing, you know, every single one of the threats that we faced so far were characters that we knew, we understood, even though we didn't necessarily always agree with what they did or the story that Blizzard was writing for them. We knew what they wanted, or we at least understood the reasoning behind their wants and needs. This is the first time everything we're learning now is so much bigger than what the world is, and we could talk about whether or not that is a good or bad thing. That's not the purposes of this discussion, however. Today, I want to try and answer from a speculation perspective those questions. His early life, his downfall, removing him, how he finally got removed, the lost centuries, and then of course the present day. What is he after, and what is it that he's trying to do? And hopefully with doing that, a little bit more light is shed on the topic. Now, before we get into it, please remember that I value your time, and in this video you will find timestamps, if you look right below this video, timestamps to all of the different chapters. If you want to skip something because you don't think it's relevant, you are more than welcome to go to another chapter, skip between them if you want, go back and forth. It's really up to you. Your time is important to me. That's why we do it. And really, all thanks goes out to Alex for putting in the time to create these timestamps. With that said, one final question that I have for you, or request really, hit the like button. It helps the channel. Also, leave a comment. I would like to see if we could get to 1,000 likes on a video. I think I've only ever done it once in my life. So if you could give me 1,000 likes on the video, I'd be happy. Much of the questions about Zovaal arises from his early life, and really the early life of the Shadowlands. We know nothing about it. That's the big problem. That's one of the places where people first start to feel disconnected. How did the Shadowlands operate? Who was the leader of the Shadowlands? Now, part of this video is me trying to answer that. First and foremost, my first posit, the first thing that I want you to believe, because I truly believe that this is true, is that Zovaal was once the leader of the Shadowlands. I will give you two reasons why I think that is the case. Reason number one, the pillar in the Arbiter's room. His pillar clearly sits at the head of the table. If you look at the Pantheon, where does Aman'Thul sit? Right at the center. The leader, the head of the table. This is where Zovaal once stood. However, that's not the biggest reason. No, the biggest reason actually comes from his sigil, and hopefully that video is on your screen right now. His sigil has the infinity sign on it. Every single, and this is thanks to the Primus, when we finally discover that the rune carver is the Primus tells us that every sigil is a representation of the Covenant's purpose. In other words, the sigil, in my mind, from a speculation standpoint, draws power from the Covenant. So the sigil represents the Covenant represents the sigil. It is what gives the Eternal Ones the power that they wield. If we look at Zovaal's sigil, it is the symbol of infinity, the start and the end, the Alpha and the Omega. So if each of the Eternal Ones has a sacred charge, a sacred duty, a purpose to fulfill, their sigil signifies the purpose that they fulfill, then Zovaal's purpose was the safeguarding of the eternal cycle, the cycle between life and death. This would automatically put him at the head of the Shadowlands. There's more, however. We now have ample evidence that he is the most powerful of all of the Eternal Ones, suggesting that he may have been first, and perhaps because of his, shall we say, temperament, it was decided that he required others to also help out. Perhaps from the beginning he had some issues with how the first ones set things up, and the first ones realized, perhaps too late, well, it doesn't help that he's the only one in control. We do need to create others to sort of balance the power, so to speak. We know he's the most powerful because Blizzard said this at BlizzCon. He is a Titan++. At the time, though, many of us believed, well, maybe all of the Eternal Ones are Titan++. We also then went further and said, okay, maybe not all of them are Titan++, but Maybe it's because of the anima that's been flowing into the Maw. But again, if we go back to how he was defeated, well, we don't know the specifics. We do know that it took the power, the combined power of all of the Eternal Ones and their covenants to bind him to the Maw. Not only that, they had to make use of a magic that does not appear to belong to them. Domination magic. This is how they finally ended up binding him, suggesting that not only was he the leader, but he was far more powerful than his brothers and sisters, so to speak. His downfall. Now in this we're not talking about his replacement, but what led to his inevitable downfall. And in this I'm a little bit tempted to include parallels from Galakrond. Galakrond was the result of a scientific experiment gone horribly wrong. You see, the Watchers wanted to create the ultimate proto-dragon, and so they funneled all of the power into a single proto-dragon, and the results were catastrophic. He became way too powerful, way too hungry, and eventually started to consume just about everything. His wings would darken the skies, and he would eat everything he'd get his hands on. I don't think it's a coincidence that Blizzard used Galakrond. Ian himself spoke about Galakrond at BlizzCon, saying that Galakrond was the first example on Azeroth where the use of necromancy took place. But we haven't seen Galakrond in the Shadowlands, and perhaps it's because it's a sort of roundabout way. You see, the story of Galakrond truly is the story of too much power, and that power being misused. This is what I believe Zovaal did. I believe as the leader of the Shadowlands, Zovaal started to question his place within the universe. Why is it that he doesn't have the right to take all life within the universe? Why is it that he can only safeguard the souls, but he's not allowed to keep them? The souls must come into the Shadowlands and then be spat back out into reality. Why is it that all of the other cosmological forces may interfere and cause problems within the system, but they, Death, may not? No, their only job is to safeguard souls. Perhaps these questions is what ultimately led him to a very dark path. One could even argue that it may have been the interference of Void Lords, the interference of maybe one of the other cosmological forces that allowed Zovaal to fall into despair, that allowed Zovaal to finally no longer agree with the Titans or the Makers' creations, not the Titans, the Makers' creations, excuse me. Titans are not Makers, I don't believe that. Or the first ones, rather. Now, here's where I sort of want to explain this. We know that Zovaal influenced Sargeras quite heavily, so that Sargeras would finally turn against his brothers. We know that that influence came at the hands of the Nathrezim. The Nathrezim, of course, in service to Denathrius, Denathrius in service to Zovaal. So why did this happen? Could it be that the Nathrezim wasn't completely lying? The very thing Zovaal was so scared of were the Void Lords, realizing that should the Void Lords get their hands on a Titan, should the Void Lords manage to corrupt life, it would have no trouble corrupting death, and should it corrupt death, it would have access to power beyond its wildest dreams. And instead, we now know, Zovaal wishes to re-originate the entirety of the universe. In other words, get everyone in line, destroy all of the cosmological forces, and ensure that complete domination exists within this universe so that everyone follows the same plan, the same rules. Could that have been the thing that contributed to his inevitable downfall? So after all of this, you know, the power trip that Zovaal was on, the Eternal Ones decide, screw that, no more. We have our sigils, our job was to create balance within the system, we need to banish you, you need to go home, right? You need to go sit in the corner, take a time out, this shit is enough. And I sort of believe that that's exactly what they thought they would do. The Primus himself says, after centuries, after eons spent in the Maw, I had hoped that it would change you. Instead, it's made you more malevolent than ever before. I believe that's the exact words that the Primus use, although I could be wrong, right? So the Primus himself tells us that this was never meant to be, or at least in their mind, it wouldn't have been a permanent banishment. Instead, it would have been, perhaps in their minds, the banishment would have served as punishment, and he would eventually correct his ways. This might be why he was ultimately called the jailer of the Maw. You see, their thinking was, yes, he'll be banished to the Maw, But eventually he'll fall in line, and then the Maw could truly become the prison. It could become the place where all the bad things are kept. You see, but they did a couple of things to him that one might argue is inhumane. Not only did they bind him to the Maw, no, they removed his sigil entirely. Remember at the beginning of the video, I told you that I don't believe that the Arbiter was there from the beginning. And we now see that. The sigil that is removed from the Arbiter, I believe, was created later. Not the sigil, the Arbiter. When they finally replaced Zovaal, when they finally bound him into the Maw and removed his sigil, they needed something new. Someone new that would preserve the eternity, that would preserve the beginning and the end. Someone that would preserve balance within the Shadowlands. And so they set out to do the one thing that they can do, building a construct. Something that does not question, that does not come up with new theories and new ways, something that will only obey and do what it was made to do. And so the Arbiter was born, a being that would forevermore judge souls. Now we know how that turned out, and there's sort of evidence that Denathrius himself had a hand in the, shall we say, replacement of the Arbiter, or at least bringing her down. This is at least according to Prince Renethal, where he states as much, that it's because of the trust that they had in Denathrius that she was ultimately betrayed. So how exactly that happened, I'm not entirely sure. But now we get to the point where Zovaal is locked up within the Maw. He's chained there, domination magic was used on him, a magic, by the way, that he had not access to. He had no access to that magic. We learn this again from the Primus. Zovaal tells the Primus, you used domination to bind me to the Maw. Now it is my weapon to wield. This would lead me to believe that the Eternal Ones themselves do not have access to domination magic. It's not a magic that they are naturally attuned to. It's a magic that they borrowed from something or someone else. A magic that is perhaps only used in case of emergency, if you really need to employ this magic. But with Zovaal now locked up, the Arbiter in place, the Shadowlands did pretty well. Right? It flourished. Every zone was able to do what exactly they needed to do. The Covenants were able to grow. Anima was flowing freely from one to the next. Ravendreth would farm Anima from the repentant souls, and the rest of the Shadowlands would feast. In many ways, the infinite cycle was preserved and was running smoothly. Finally, the Shadowlands in absolute harmony. Every Eternal One looking over their covenant, ensuring that the purpose is always honored. The Arbiter ever still, ever silent, judging souls and ensuring that the anima keeps flowing. However, deep within the bowels of the Maw lies Zovaal, bound but not broken. He would spend the rest of his time in the Maw figuring out how this magic functions. How were they capable of binding him into the Maw, and how can he turn his chains into his ultimate weapon? And he manages to do it. I would argue that Zovaal is now far more powerful than what he was when they first chained him, because now I don't think domination magic would work on him. You see, but he's not only figuring out how to dominate or manipulate domination magic, he's laying the groundwork for his plan. And I will have a video that I'm literally busy working on as we speak, where I go into exactly how he planned his ultimate or penultimate escape. But let's just be very clear. It started with Sargeras. From Sargeras, there is a Lich King. From a Lich King, there is a Banshee Queen. All of this. And of course, from a Banshee Queen, there is also a Denathrius. Banshee Queen could also lead into Helia. In fact, there might be strings upon strings upon strings that we know nothing about. In fact, he's been busy for so long that it seems that even the Void knows about him. They know who he is. N'Zoth warns us about Zovaal, tells us that the Banshee Queen will unleash darkness and only I can save you from this fate. But Zovaal carefully he lines all of the dominoes up so that when the first one falls, it will be a cascade of destruction. And all of this destruction will allow him to ultimately emerge victorious. You see, he created chaos where chaos never existed. And in this chaos, he was able to flourish. This is how he spent his time in the Maw. This gives us a little bit of insight into the Eternal Ones that were created after Zovaal. They seem far more like the Titans, very one-dimensional in their thinking, one-dimensional in their applying and the application of their duties. They do not question, they do not They do not wander. This is my job. This is my purpose. This is my covenant. This is the job that I do. Once again, leading credence to Zovaal not being the same. Similar, but not the same. He seems to be capable of questioning the very universe that he exists in. He seems to be capable of operating outside of the very purpose that he was created for. Now that we've sort of covered the history, let's get back to present day. What do we know now? Well, Sylvanas was used by Zovaal in order to get all of the sigils. Once he had all of the sigils, he now decided, screw it, it's time for me to open a big-ass portal to some land. I would argue that land is Azeroth. And while I will have a future video where I lay out precisely where I think and why I think that is, I will give you guys a hint. And if you want to know more, hit the subscribe button because I will have videos going into more depth. But I do believe that the Sepulcher, or at least the entrance to the Sepulcher, lies within Lordaeron. This is why he needs Anduin. You see, in order to open the way into the Sepulcher, a being of the light is required. It would make sense as to why every being that he's chosen as his Lich King was a champion of the light. When he saw Anduin using the light, it was like literally light bulb moment. Interesting. No, I have exactly what I need. You'll remember that. Why? Why was the light so important to him? Perhaps because where he needs to go, only the light can open the way. Crazy? Maybe. You might be correct. But why all of the sigils? What would these sigils be required for? And more importantly, maybe these sigils were simply necessary in order to get to the Sepulcher of the first ones. But then it didn't seem like he used all of those sigils to open that portal. No. He has the sigils with him. Could it be that the sigils themselves is the essence of the first ones? So only a first one can actively trigger the reorigination. So by combining all of the sigils, and here's why I do believe that this is a combination of sigils. If you look at the armor of Zovaal, there is sort of Drust viewings there, but also very Ardenweald. The Drust seems very Ardenweald-like in their armors. If you look at the Ardenweald armor, the breastplate definitely sort of looks similar. His knees, on the other hand, is very death-like, almost a little bit Maldraxian. So perhaps that armor is the mergence of all of the sigils into a singular being, allowing him to present himself as a first one, someone capable of triggering the reorigination of the universe. And of course, he doesn't want to do this because he thinks the whole world should have a pony. No. Ponies are not on the menu here today, folks. No, he's future. The future that he envisions is one where the entirety of the universe shall dominate. The universe shall bow to domination, and he will be the king. This, of course, is what leads Sylvanas to going, no, I don't like that. That's a bad idea. I don't want to serve anyone, so we should change that immediately. I wanted freedom. You are clearly not interested in giving me freedom, which I think a lot of people saw coming from the very beginning. I still do not understand, and this is the final thing that I will bring up. I do not understand why the first ones would leave something of such power in the hands of eternal ones. So what is the Sepulcher of the first ones? Is it truly their burial ground? Is that where they went to die? Or is it what I believe, the cradle of humanity? It's where humanity gets to live. It's where all life started. The beginning is the end is the beginning. It's where all life started, and it is also where all life will go to die. And it seems apt to me that that is on Azeroth. But of course, if you like this video, if you like videos like this one, please remember to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and smash that bell. To all of the patrons, the Twitch subs, and the YouTube channel members, thank you so much for your monthly contributions. We are busy building a massive community over on Patreon. I'm always looking for more content that I can sort of upload there so that we can get, more freedom to create and more freedom to maybe get new people in so we can start putting together some really awesome videos for all of you. So all of your support is very much appreciated over there. Remember, the like button helps, the comments help, and then of course, if you want to join us live on Twitch, the link in the description down below. Discord is also a wonderful place if you want to join a part of the community where lore and speculation literally is at the heart of everything we do. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate each and every one of you. I love you, and I will see you in the next one. Peace out, fam.